Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts, and tonight I have a full time-lapse video of my vintage patchwork Santa art quilt. Do you want to see it? Now, is this the quilt that I set out to make? No, but then it was. Does that sound confusing? Last Thursday, an idea of the vintage Santa popped up in my head, and I've been going on it non-stop, day and night. And today I finished up this art quilt. Now, is this technically a collage quilt? I don't think so. It's more of a mixed media art, raw edge applique quilt. But technically it has the bones of a collage quilt, but it's not the collage quilt that I set out to make. And I'm going to show you my progress on that. And that's the quilt that I started to make first. And being my first collage quilt, about 6 hours in, I decided that maybe I shouldn't have chosen an image that has a detailed face. So I stopped. And this is how this quilt started, right? Because I wasn't ready to give up. So I started in on this quilt, which is my comfort zone. Do you know what I'm saying? The larger pieces of applique, they are layered. There's some mixed media. There's crayon in this quilt, y'all. Crayon. But yes, we're going to do a time lapse of this video. But I want to talk about collage quilts for just a second because I think I'm just now diving my toes into it. And I've been quilting for years and years and years, you know. And this kind of thing is me. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I just love it, right? And so I think I'm going to really love collage quilts too, but I have to be more patient with myself. Let me just show you my first attempt at a collage Santa. This is where I am with my first collage Santa. And this is about 6 hours in, and I started on the face, and I was getting so frustrated with it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start all over again. But I still have this Santa, and I think with some patience and more free time, I can come in and start improving the base and maybe do some stitching and some embellishing to, you know, finish up and make this Santa look more of what I was going for. I do love the beard on this one though, right? And of course, he still needs his clothing and background. So this is just his hat, face, and beard at this point. And then I stopped. But I think this qualifies more as a collage quilt. But this is what I ended up with. So let me just tell you, and I feel like I need to slow down because I'm so excited to dive into this. But before we start the time lapse, I just want to say, first, if you want the link for this, it is down in the description box to get your vintage patchwork Santa. It is a 6-page PDF. There is a colored picture on the first page and then 6 pages for the Santa drawing. That's it. There's no instructions because there's no right way, there's no wrong way. This video, I hope, inspires you and shows you like a way to do it, or a way to get started. But let me just tell you, if you watch 5 art quilters or 5 collage quilters, whatever, you're going to see 5 people do it 5 completely different ways. Now, these 2 people might do something similar, but one's going to change it up because there's no rules. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. And I love that about art quilts. And I love that art quilts break all the rules. You can use things on art quilts that traditionally you wouldn't do in a traditional bed quilt, right? I don't plan on washing this quilt, so we can do a lot more with that than we normally would, right? And so I know people are going to say, what happens if you wash this? Well, we're not washing it. It's art. And it's not intended to be washed and used like a snuggly quilt, right? that changes all the rules, right? Don't you think? So let me just share a picture of you. This is the main reason why I save scraps, right? Let me just pull up what my scrap, this is some of the scrap buckets I have. I get these bins from the Dollar Tree. And this is how I organize my scraps and sort them in colorways and baskets and things like this. And I just pull over the colors I need and I ruffle through them. When I'm doing a quilt like this, my area is a total disaster. And it stays that way until I am finished, right? And that's just how my mind works doing things like this. Now, the things I'm going to use in today's video, you don't have to have. You could do it a totally different way. Like I'm going to be using my light pad and a silicone mat. A lot of people don't use a light pad or a silicone mat. Some people do it with a foundation fabric. Trace it on a big window, right? Garden Archway is a quilt we did several years ago with a foundation fabric. Some people use parchment paper instead of a silicone mat. You could certainly do that. So don't think because I don't have a light pad or I don't have a silicone mat that I can't get started today. If you have parchment paper or a piece of white fabric, you could get started with this today, right? We're going to put on our thinking caps, think outside the box, because where there is a will, there's a way to make a quilt similar to this, right? And I hope you do, and I hope you share pictures with me. All right, that's enough. We're going to go ahead and get started with the time lapse, okay? And I did a time lapse because this is hours and hours of footage. And if I did not speed it up, I know some people always say, I don't like it when you speed up the videos. Do you want to be here for 7 hours? Probably not. I would lose you 10 minutes in, right? So we're going to cram all of the hours worth of footage into this, okay? Let's get started. You're going to see I have the drawing all taped together. It's 6 pages. You're going to tape it together just like I did. Now I'm choosing to use Heat and Bond Feather Light for this project because I have a whole bolt of it and I have not been using it and it's super light, okay? Heat and Bond Feather Light has a light purple package, okay? And it is even lighter than Heat and Bond Light. Now was it strong enough for this project where I pressed and pressed and pressed it? Maybe not. But you're going to see I find a way to accommodate for that here in just a little bit too. But what I'm doing is I've decided for this quilt I'm going to go ahead and be more controlled and is it methodical about this quilt. Instead of just collaging lots of fabric pieces, I'm tracing a mirrored image from the back side of the drawing, right? So use my light pad, trace all the pieces. I like to number and letter mine so that it all makes sense. Once you cut all these pieces apart, if this is the way you decide to do it, they're all going to look the same and you're going to be like, where does this go? So whatever makes sense for your brain, number the pattern pieces, letter them, and letter all of your little tracings, right? If this is the way you decide to do it. And then I'm going to cut them apart and I'm going to separate them into face pieces, hat pieces, and body pieces. And I'm going to work on each section individually, okay? I think for me, that was the easiest way to do it. So I'm just going through with my little rotary cutter and separating and sorting all the pieces. So here's my big drawing. And now I have it the printed side facing up, right? And I'm going to layer it onto my light pad. I love my big light pad for this. And I have a silicone mat. Y'all, this is just an ordinary baking silicone mat from Amazon. I will put a link down in the description. It actually comes in 3 different sizes. This is the big one, and I love it. It's grippy, so the pieces don't move around as you're working with them, and you can fuse right on the silicone mat, and when it's cooled off, you can lift the whole piece up. So lots of multiple pieces are fused into one applique shape, right? Great for collage quilts. Now, one thing I do want to say about tracing the pieces is when I trace them, I tend to usually cut them out just a smidgen beyond my trace line to accommodate how thin my trace line is. And some of the sides, like, let me just pause right here. Can you see that right close up to where my scissors are? There's two lines right there. On some of my pieces, I trace the actual shape of the piece, and then I add a smidgen to one side because I know that I plan on overlapping the next piece so that all my pieces can fuse together like a collage, right? And they all will meld together as one piece, and I'll be able to move them as one piece. So I think about, when I'm tracing my pieces, what pieces are going to overlap, and I add a little bit to that piece to allow for that overlapping. Okay? And then I'm cutting out all my pieces. Now I just have my piles of scraps and my buckets of scraps sitting next to me, right? And I'm just auditioning. I'm looking at the color photo, which does come with the drawing. And that gives me a lot of inspiration, and I'm kind of a color way to go by. And then sometimes I use that and sometimes I don't. And I go through and I audition, what fabrics do I have here, and that's what I use. But you can see, or I'm hoping that you can see, the left side of that green piece just overlaps the piece on the left, right? And you can kind of see that because the light board is on. When you turn the light off, you won't be able to see that through the fabric. Now here is where the fun really begins for me. I have my kiddos' crayon box from back in their elementary school days. That's their crayons, right? Am I going to use them on my fabric and my quilt? Yes. Am I going to stitch through it? Yes. Did it mess up my iron? No. Could it mess up your fabric and your pressing board if you're not careful? Yeah, it's kind of messy. I have a piece of parchment paper. Will it wash out of a quilt if you were to wash it? Yes, it would. Using these is not meant for a quilt that's going to go through the laundry. What I want to do with the crayons is add some shading and some definition around the edge of each one of these pieces. See that? So this is me just brushing the crayon on the edges and setting that crayon with my iron. See that? And then I take a paper towel and I heat it again just to check to see if any of the wax comes off. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, right? And soaking up the wax with the paper towel brings out a lot of that wax, and you don't have to worry about it in your quilts, right? It just leaves the pigment of the color behind. The pigment would wash out. I've tried it before years ago. It'll wash out. But that's how I'm adding like the definition, some shading to my pieces, a more vintage outline around each one of the pieces, right? Now, I want to stop the video here for a second because you saw me trace all of the pattern pieces from the back side of the drawing to get a mirrored image. Well, for this particular piece, I really wanted to use this green striped fabric that I had, but I already had fused the fusible on the back for the collage Santa that I was doing first, right? And that was the last piece of that particular green that I had, and it already had the fusible on it. So I want you to see, I peeled the paper back off. The fusible is stuck on the fabric, and I'm tracing on the paper the shape. And then because I need it to be a mirror image, I'm going to flip the paper over and retrace that shape, fuse the paper back on the fabric, and now I can use this fabric and have the exact shape, right? So this is another way of getting your pieces. So let's say you don't have access to a window, you don't have a light pad, right? And you have an easier time seeing the pieces with the printed side facing up and not doing a mirrored image. Flip the pattern right side up, fuse your fusible to your fabric, peel it away, and then that is much easier to see through to trace your pieces, okay? There's an idea for you. And you'll see me do it right here. Then I'm going to trace it again to get the mirrored image, right? It's kind of like a double tracing, but it works, and it works great. So you can see, like, I'm starting here with his hat. You could start on his face. You could start with the beard. You could start with his body. No rules. You could start with the background, maybe. Now you can see I wanted a darker outline, so I actually heated up the fabric, and that catches more of the crayon, right? It's much darker. I really like that a lot. And then I'm just going to put a Teflon sheet right over top of it and fuse all these pieces in place, fuse them, bond them. So now I have one applique shape, right? Then I'm going to move to the top of his hat, and we're going to go through and add all the pieces for that. These are my favorite kinds of projects because, you know, I don't have to worry about accurate seam allowances. I can just turn on some music or have something, you know, a book playing in the background. Maybe I'm listening to other YouTube videos in the background. But most of the time it's just music. And I'm just chilling and working through the pieces. It's like a giant puzzle, right? Now you can see the top of the hat I want to tuck up under the brim. So as I'm cutting those out, I'm lifting up the brim and tucking it under. And that's one of the reasons why I cut my pieces a slightly bigger. See those double lines on that piece? That's to accommodate tucking the piece up under the brim and under the next piece that's getting added, right? See how when you heat up the fabric, it really catches the color from the crayon? I love that. And then I just heat set it. And I do go through and take a paper towel at some point and just press over top of everything, soaking up that wax, right? Now the thing about the Heat and Bond Featherlight, you can see I'm fusing the Featherlight on the fabric initially. And then I'm doing some work with a crayon and using an iron. And then I'm putting the piece in place and I'm fusing it to the other pieces. There's a lot of fusing, and I just think that the adhesive kind of just melds into the fabric at some point. Do you know what I'm saying? So I do still, I would say Heat and Bond Light is still my favorite, but it even happens with that. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why you're going to see me pull out a glue stick and make sure that the overlapped pieces are really truly bonded before I move this piece, right? Because I don't trust the Heat and Bond Featherlight after I've pressed it so much. Like I'm kind of thinking it might be soaked into the fabric. So that was the hat. And next we're going to move on to the face. And you can use fabric markers. You're going to see me use a black fabric marker for some details here in just a minute. But you can use different colors of fabric markers, fabric paint. You could do free motion stitching with different embroidery colored threads, right? I'm going to use a crayon, and it gives a very light blended shading to the areas that I want to do, like blushed rosy cheeks, right? And some shadows and some rosiness around the face. And a crayon is a great way to add color. And so I'm just using one piece of fabric for the face, but it's going to look like it came, like I bought it that way, almost a little bit, right? And then I'm going to add fabric pieces for the eyes and for the eyebrows and mustache layered on top of this piece. So yeah, that's how I did the face. It's crayons. You could use Inktense pencils. You could use Sunoco. I know I said that wrong. Sunoco inks. So many different ways to do this, right? You could cut little bits of fabric and do rosy cheeks and make a nose with little bits of fabric if you wanted to. And that's my goal on my original collage Santa. It's just I think I have to be more patient with myself. And you can see I took the paper off the back because I can see through the fabric a little bit easier with that paper removed, right? It's a little bit more translucent that way. But this is so much fun. And I don't really think you have to be skilled at drawing or painting to do this, right? The guides are there. The shape of the eyes, the shape of the nose, the lip, the little bottom lip, the shape of the eyebrows. It's all there for you. And you can just color. And the crayons are a great way to do that. See, it's coming to shape, coming to life already. You can see the dark area of the mouth and underneath the nose. I just used a black fabric marker. Now I'm going to go in and do some shading areas around the nose and the eyes. Some little wrinkles on the forehead and around the face, the little squinty parts of the eyes, right? I feel like I could have kept going, and at some point I was like, am I doing too much? So I stopped. But see, just that shading with the crayon gives the rosy cheeks, the little rosy nose, adds some definition and some character to the face, right? I love that. It's so much fun. And, you know, a box of crayons, you get what? 24 colors, 48 colors, 72 colors. They have the mega boxes like 84 colors or 120 colors, right? That's a lot of colors of crayons. Then I'm going to take my fabric marker, my black fabric marker. I'm going to put a link for that down in the description box. And just add some details to the mustache and to the eyebrows. And there's the face. Now you want to see something funny? When I moved the face over to the side of the mat, it looks pretty realistic to me. Hold on a second. Doesn't that look crazy? His little face right there. All right, let's get back to it. I did his face as one piece with the mustache and the eyebrows, and I'm moving it off to the side because next I want to do the eyes. And so I cut the white part of the eye, and then what is that? The iris of the eye out of fabric. And I'm going to fuse those in place, right? And then the pupil was kind of small. So I said, instead of cutting that out of black fabric, I'm just going to use my black fabric marker and color it in. See that? And now I can lift my little eyes up, put the face back, and line the eyes up exactly where they go. See what a difference the eyes make? Right? Isn't that fun? Now, again, I'm just going in and adding some details. Like, I feel like you don't have to do this, but it's fun to do it. And I think I really love the way that it turned out. Again, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to know how to draw or know how to paint to do this. And the more that you just let yourself do it and give yourself the freedom to do it, the more practice you get, I think the better that you get, as with anything, right? So now the face is done and the hat is done, and I'm going to keep those as two separate sections, but just move them off to the side. And now I'm going to work on the beard. So for this Santa, I thought instead of 600 little beard pieces, I'm going to cut one main beard piece. Do you know what I'm saying? And we'll give it details and using markers and threads or whatever. You'll see what I do here in a minute. But one beard piece for this particular Santa. My collage Santa, I love his beard. It took me hours, but it's made of lots of different beard pieces. You can see some of the parts of the beard I actually want to cut out so that it's like loops of beard curls, and you can see it through the beard in certain places. So that's what I'm doing here. Just some fussy cutting. Sometimes I think I'm a little extra. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that it was necessary to do this, but I kind of like the results of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes I'm a bit much. So at this point, I still have the paper on, which really acts as a great stabilizer for cutting the fabric, right? Keeping the shape of the fabric. And guess what? I'm going to bring it over here and add some shading and an outline to the edge of the beard fabric too. See that? Now this is a white on white fabric. So you can see the crayon sort of acts a little bit differently on this fabric, but I really like it. And I don't think it was dark enough, so I'm going to go back and add a little bit more to make it a little bit darker around the edges. Now, is this necessary for your art quilt? Do you have to color the pieces with crayon or markers or paint? Nope. You can just cut them out of fabric, bond them in place, and stitch them down. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't have to do any of the edging on the pieces, but see what a difference it makes though? Do you see that? Now I'm going to take my black fabric marker on this Santa's beard, and I'm just going to trace the little squiggly beard lines. And I do go in as I'm stitching and stitch some zigzag on a few of them just to add some stitching areas to it. but I kind of go very minimal on this Santa's beard. I do audition 3 little fabric swirls, and you'll see that here in just a second, but I ended up not using them in the long run. Now I'm going to go in and just add a little bit of shading in some of the little curls. I'm going to add some defining little squiggly lines in some of the beard swirls. Now there's the 3 swirls that I was auditioning, and then I decided not to use them on this one. Just see, I'm just going to add like little wispy beard lines here and there. I think it adds a lot of character to it too, don't you think? Now at first I was like, am I doing too much? And then once I started, I was like, oh, this is fun. And I just kept on going. They're just little curved lines, following the little curves of the strands of the beard, right? Okay, so the beard is done. We're going to move down to his clothing, right? His body part. And that's lots of little pieces. I went ahead and pre-cut them all out. And we're just going to see as I add one by one. They're overlapping by just a smidgen, like a collage, right? Only bigger pieces. But they are overlapping so that this bonds and makes one piece in the end. And I am adding the shading off to the side with the crayon just to add a little outline, a little shading on each individual piece like I did before. You can see I bring in paper towel periodically and soak up any of the wax on the fabric and get that out of there. And I'm just cutting and coloring and fusing from one side over to the next. So if you're starting a project like this and you haven't been quilting or sewing very long and you don't have a great big variety of stash to choose from, right? Charm packs, a great way to get a large amount of different kinds, different prints of fabric, different colors of fabric. Yard sales, thrift stores, go to the craft section and look for bundles of bags of fabrics. I love to check out the thrift stores and yard sales because usually there's a bag and it's got all kinds of random stuff, fabrics in there. Some of them aren't even cotton, but would be great for a project like this, right? Jolly rolls, not a jolly roll, jelly rolls, jolly bars, charm packs, mini charms. Great way to get lots of different colors and prints without just having to buy lots and lots of yardage, right? Also, you know, I'm not opposed to making a post like on Facebook with your friends and say, hey, I'm looking to trade this for some fabric scraps. Do you have any fabric scraps? I'll trade you this for that. You know what I'm saying? Just working right along. I can't tell you exactly how long it took to cut out the pieces and fuse all this in place, but it was a good part of the afternoon. Doesn't that look so cute and charming, right? So I'm just going to move the whole silicone mat right over to the pressing board and really just press this whole thing and set the pigment, set the color in the fabric, you know, and get all those pieces stuck together, and then you can pick them all up and move them as one piece. Now, this is where I'm bringing in some lightweight fusible interfacing. It's basically the same thing as Pellon P44F. It's what I use now in t-shirt quilts, either plantational or Zosimity. I don't know how to say it, but I'm going to link it down in the description box. It's the same thing I use in t-shirt quilts. Very, very lightweight, very drapable, but fusible. One side has little tiny adhesive bumps and one side is smooth. Now, because I have fused these pieces, you saw me with an iron on high, 390 degrees. Fuse those pieces so much that I really feel like the adhesive is not that strong anymore. And it was light to begin with. Feather light to begin with. I really feel like all the applique needs another foundation, place for it to stick. And I want to do a collage of black fabric around the Santa. So I'm going to bring in 2 pieces of this lightweight fusible interfacing and lay it on my table and build my Santa on this, fuse it down, but not fuse around the edges of the Santa, so I can lift the edges of Santa up and tuck pieces of fabric underneath of him and build a completely original background for this Santa. Okay, so that's what this is. It's just a lightweight fusible interfacing. I'm just going to start building my Santa. It's in 4 main parts at this point: the body, the beard, the face, and the hat. Now, this quilt, the way that I drew him was in a long, like, portrait type of box. So when I traced it, if I would have thought about it, I would have extended his shoulders more rounded and came down, and I could have made this quilt wider. I think the next time I make this quilt, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to freehand the pieces on the sides a little bit wider and rounder and make him a wider quilt. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a little boxed in at the bottom. So then I'm just layering on the face and the hat. And I really wanted the little wispy part, the little tiny little wispy curl hair part right there to stick over top of the hat. See that little wispy? I want that on top of the hat. So I'm going to cut it and then snip the hat so that this part lays on top of the hat. Like so. See that? I don't know that that's necessary, but that's what I wanted. And then I'm going to start anchoring and fusing the main parts of the applique center right on that fusible. And you can see I left the edges unfused so I can lift them up and tuck. Now I'm building a collage of black fabric scraps all around my Santa. I'm going to fill up a much bigger space than what I actually wanted so that I could trim the Santa quilt once it's quilted nice and square. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm just adding little bits of fabric all the way around. You could put this Santa on a solid piece of fabric. Or you could do something like this, right? Make your own background from a whole bunch of different fabrics. You could piece. You could take a charm pack of really pretty squares of fabric, piece them traditionally, press the seams, and that could be the background for your Santa too. Something like that. You can see, I think a project isn't a project unless you use a glue stick. Y'all, this is just an Elmer's glue stick. It's this one's actually the purple one that Wanda sent me. School glue stick, that's all it is, right? You can sew through it, you can stitch through it, you can hand sew through it, and it does not gum up your machine needle. It is dry by the time I bring it over to the sewing machine, so I'm not sewing through any wet glue, and it's fine. Now I've decided to put in a black thread in the top and bobbin. And I'm going to go through with various different sizes of zigzag stitch because I want it to be sort of vintage, kind of handmade kind of look. I don't know what is a good word for that. Not rough looking, but what's a good word for it, y'all? I don't want it to look prim and proper and perfect. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm using various different sizes of zigzag stitches. I'm even building up a back stitch in some places so that it looks like it's a little thicker in some places, you know. I don't know what word would be appropriate for that. But I'm going through and I'm sewing down all the raw edges mostly. Guess what? I did not sew down the raw edges for the little eyes or the lips. And there were some little patches in the background that I missed. I didn't sew those down. And when I did my quilting, the quilting stitched over those places and have permanently stitched them down. If the thought of sewing down all of these little pieces is so daunting to you and you're like, forget that, why not layer a piece of tulle that just kind of disappears over top of everything and do a minimal crosshatch quilting just to anchor it, to get it quilted, add some definition to the quilt, right? And the tulle keeps those fabrics from lifting. There's another great way to finish this. But I'm not really concerned about sewing all the pieces down because I know that I'm going to bring this over to the long arm. I'm going to do a really dense edge-to-edge quilting on it. And whatever I missed, the quilting will take care of. Do you know what I'm saying? I think if I had time, I probably would have done some free stitching, free motion stitching, some thread painting. But work is calling, and I have to move past this project in my mind. So playtime is over for a little while for me. So this was it. But there's so much more embellishing that you could do on this. I even wanted to make some freestanding lace snowflakes and adhere them in the background, but there isn't time for that. And my work has been calling my name, and I have totally just ignored everything. And I really do need to get back to doing some stuff. But it's been a fun distraction. I've had so much fun, and I'm hoping that this project inspires you. Maybe you saw a technique that you're like, you know what, maybe I should try that. Or you see this project and your mind speaks to you doing it a completely different way, and you have great success with that. That is awesome, right? Now I do have plans to go back to my original collage Santa, like the true collage Santa. But it's going to be a couple weeks before I have time to do that. I will be putting this Santa in my studio tour. It needs a binding. That's all it needs. So once this was done, I did load some backing fabric. There's a small amount of fabric. It's not a huge quilt on the long arm. Picked a really nice, sort of echoing, really close and dense design. And I'll show you here before we go. And got it quilted. But don't you think that this is fun? I hope you do. Like I'm looking at it and I'm seeing like things are coming to mind. Oh, I could do this and I could do that. I could have done that. I could have added this. I really feel like I could have done a lot more with this and just kept on going if the time were there to do that. Do you know what I mean? So while this is not a detailed instruction like do this, do this, do this, do this, and this is your outcome. Kind of like making a traditional quilt block, right? This is not that, and I don't think a project like this will ever be that. While it isn't that, I do hope that the time lapse process has given you sort of a how to get started in your journey of making this quilt, right? And we'll come back here. I know that was fast and it was a lot. I feel like for many of you, you've been making quilts like this, and this is nothing new for you. But after posting pictures on my Facebook, I'm reading all the comments, and for many of you, this is opening up a whole new world to you. And isn't that exciting? Like, that gets me excited. So I hope that you have so much fun with this. Drop me a comment down below and let me know some ideas of themes of quilts that you would like to see in the future. Like, maybe not a Santa. I have a fireplace scene in mind. But I have to get to work. And I can't play for a couple of days, right? So I have to focus. But leave me some ideas of maybe some art quilts that you'd like to explore in the future, and we'll see where this can go. All right, everybody. I'll see y'all on my normal Friday live. Have fun with this. Bye.
Stitching him tight, each patch a story. Every thread unbinding love and fabric where we belong. Every stitch a whispered prayer. In every corner I find you there. Oh, sweet patchwork of our